What is up, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome to episode or video 2.3 when we're talking about Microsoft Access forms and their properties. You'll also notice I'm made up of more than like 200 pixels on my webcam because I'm still learning OBS. So sorry for the earlier videos where I had some low res action going. Hopefully this will work out better. So what are we talking about today? We are talking about access forms and their properties. This is a beginner course. Please ensure you have your coffee. Oh, yeah, good stuff. Now let's get started. I thought I'd go ahead and add a new slide that I normally haven't. So if you're just starting Access, right, and you're starting from the very beginning, it may be hard to kind of follow the bouncing ball, right, between the episodes. So what I'm going to do is I made kind of like a main quest line, like in adventure video games, where you have a main quest and you can breeze through it to get to the end real quick, and then you've got all the side quests. Well, these are the main quests so far. Is we started with 1.1 table basics. Right now we're doing the third video on forms. The first two kind of introduce you to forms, just what they look like. We're going to start diving down more. We're still in a beginner, but it's going to start getting progressively more complex. So each episode builds on the previous episode, and you'll see the next one after this will actually be database table relationships. So we're going to jump back to the tables area, but it's going to be the second episode in that. So that's kind of how these episodes work. They just, again, and this is for the beginner people who are just starting Access, right? So you want to follow that kind of order to get the best out of it. And then once you start to learn the lingo and how things work, you can jump around. People who already know all this stuff, just feel free to jump wherever you are in the channel. So groovy. So we're going to just jump into form properties, and here's kind of what we're going to go over. Not too hard. So what is a property? It's basically just an attribute or characteristic of an object. So you have to realize in Access, just like kind of in the real world, everything is an object, whether you can see it or not. So this coffee cup would be an object. This computer, the screen, this video would be an object, even though it's not tangible. It's something that we can know things about. Same thing in Access. So almost everything you see, actually everything you see basically, is some kind of object with properties, things that describe that object, right? And so controlling the properties in Access is one way to control how your application looks and behaves. So I'll give you a real world example, and then we'll kind of dive into how it works in Access. So real world example, let's take the laptop that I'm using to record this episode on. So it's just a little HP Envy laptop, right? And so the object would be the laptop itself. And the properties would be things that we know about this object. So for instance, the model number, name and number, the screen size, whether it's a 2-in-1, true or false, and then the weight, like the default weight, right? Pretty simple so far. Now you'll notice I didn't put in things like storage, memory size, etc. Why is that? Well, because I wanted to get a little more granular. So if you note, although this object is the laptop, that's the primary object, it has sub-objects like memory bank number 1, right? Storage drive number 1, the webcam. And they're going to have their own properties associated with them. So, and if you think about it, this makes sense, right? So if I were to take a memory stick, let's say I'm producing a laptop and I'm using Samsung memory, and then I decide to switch to some other brand of memory, the characteristics, the properties of the laptop as a whole, you know, it's still a 14-inch laptop, it's still a 2-in-1, it's still an HP Envy, but maybe I swapped out memory modules, and maybe we had a supply problem. Those properties for that memory would change, right? And so that's where it's nice to be able to subdivide things. So the object is a laptop, and within that object are sub-objects, and they have their own properties. So the laptop has its properties as a whole, and it has kind of sub-objects with their own properties. Pretty easy so far, right? So now this is kind of harkening back to episode 2.1, where I kind of showed you the forms can have a header, a footer, and a detail area. Well, they have their own properties. So the object itself, and I'll show you this on the screen, if you click basically the form selector button, has properties, and then the header, detail, and footer have their own properties as well. So let's jump over to our test database if you're following along. We haven't really done anything so far. I've showed examples, but what this what this is just a test database. And right now I have a table called colors. Now what I did do is I did make a slight modification between episodes. So I added a field called cost per ounce. Feel free to customize that any way you want. Cost per ounce is a new field in that table, and it is a currency field. So just for the people who are starting out, if you don't remember how to do that, you right-click your table and you go to Design View. You just type the name of your field. I did cost per OZ, and I made it a currency field, and then I saved the table rather, and then I just filled in some fake numbers. So here are the colors 1 through 10 with 7 missing because that was an auto ID we deleted previously, so it's never going to come back on this table. And then we have a cost per ounce. So now let's make a form out of this table, and we're going to do a continuous form. Now, if you remember from the earlier episodes, there are reasons we pick the various form types, right? And it's gonna get more complex as we go on, and you'll see the differences as we continue. But for right now, let's do something easy. So we're gonna go to the Create tab, we're gonna go to More Forms, and we're going to go to Multiple Items or Continuous Forms, right? And so now we have this really ugly multiple items form. It almost looks like you're looking at the table itself, except for now it's got a blue header to it and some kind of default graphics, etc. Now let's go to Design View on this form, just because this is where the magic starts to happen. So now you'll notice the dot. The dot up here coincides with this guy here, right? So when I want to mess with the form at large, always hit the dot. And so I click that, and you'll notice that you've got this property sheet window over here if you do not see it. If it's not there for some reason, right? Go to up top, Form Design tab. There's a button called Property Sheet. Click it, boom, right? You can actually undock this thing, have it floating around if you want to, put it on a second monitor, etc. I just prefer to have it right there on the side. You can always scroll around your form if you need to. So once we have this entire form selected, you'll see that there's all these properties coming up about this form. Right? Now, some things you can edit. You don't have to go through the properties to do that. So, for instance, let's say I don't like this default icon. Let's get rid of it. Actually, let's just get rid of all this crap up here because I don't like it. And remember what we did about the arrangement, right? We go to Arrange, remove the layout, right? So I've got the ID. I want to show the ID of my color selection, the name of the color, and then the cost per ounce. Right. Now you'll notice these are just like the laptop example. These are sub-objects within an object. So the object is a form, and within that form we have multiple objects, right? Multiple basic parts of the form and objects within the form. So these are kind of like objects within the form, and this form header, form footer, and the detail section are parts of the form. Now, if you don't see your form header, remember what we can do is we can right-click and turn on and off the form header, right? So you can right-click that bar, it's off, right-click the detail bar again, turn it back on. You want to do form header, not page header. Page header is kind of for printing, and printing forms is generally a bad idea. That's what reports are for. But for now, let's do this. So we've got this form header here. Now you'll note that right now I've got the whole form selected, and here are some of the properties available, right, to the side. Now if I click this form header, you'll notice that these properties change, right? There's way less now and you'll notice that this drop down at the top is talking about your form header, right? I can actually go back to the form as a whole by using this drop down menu, or by using this black dot. I can go to the form header this way. It's often just easier to click the different sections. But if you're over here, sometimes let's say you have 50 text boxes, right? And you're looking for that particular one, you can use this drop down. Right now, this is a very simple form. So let's do some things to this form. So first of all, we want to change the background color because I don't like it. So, and let's make it a little wider while we're at it. So right now I'm on the form header, and you'll note the form properties. It says back color, right? And it's maybe has some text. That text is relating to whatever theme you have currently. If you hit the little 3 dots, you get to select whatever color you want. You can go to more colors, do a custom color, do an RGB code for a color, right? So let's do something that's kind of like a steel blue. A light steel blue, hit OK, and then maybe make the header a little bigger. Now what I want to do is I'm going to add part of a form called a label. So I'll go to form design. It's typically the third icon from the right. I don't have hover over tips enabled, but it's this guy right here, right? Text box is this one, labels this one. So let's draw, and let's just tell it what it is, colors. Now you'll notice my font is tiny, so we're going to go to the Format tab, pick whatever font fits your fancy, right? Let's do that with maybe a size 20. Let's go 28. And then I'm going to change the font size to black. Now, labels by default will have this border around them, so let's look at how this form looks right now. So we're going to go to Form View, and there we are. Not too bad. Actually, maybe it doesn't have a border around it. Oh, that's why. Okay. Now you'll notice when I select this label, notice now look at all these properties, right? Go to the form itself. I have different properties. Go to this header, I've got a few. Select this label, I've got a few, right? So each object, again, each object or sub-object within the form has its own properties in it, and we can really control how that object behaves. Now, it's important to note that while you can get to most or many properties from the screen, you can't always do that. So I'll show you an example. So remember, so actually, let's make this really pretty. So this cost per ounce, so this color name needs to get a larger font just for screen purposes, right? So we're going to make the color name larger. Now look at this cost per ounce. I know this is a money figure, right? So I'm going to align it to the right. Your country may vary on how you guys do your numbers. I'm going to make it wider. And now let's look at what the form looks like. You'll notice I've got this white space gap. Let's say I don't want it. I'm going to remember this detail section repeats because we are in continuous forms. And the way to do that, you don't have to make a new form to check how your form looks. If you go to remember this property is dealing with the entire form. So select your whole form. Over here it says default view. And that's why I call this a continuous forms. There's actually a mismatch between what the menu says and what the property says. So the default view, continuous forms or multiple items, right? Same thing. And you have to have allow form view, yes, right? So the default when I go to form view is continuous items, right? So now I have my entire list, but let's say I don't like that alternate color. Now, if you're brand new, will click forever looking for how to get rid of that alternative color, right? Like I just want white rose, I don't want white gray, etc. You have to realize that is a property of not the entire form, but a property of the detail section. So the detail section, again, has its own properties, and you'll see back color is background 1, or AKA white in this instance. I'm going to change to also background 1. All right, I'm going to save it as form color list just because I hit Control S. And then now we got rid of the gray bars. But there is a lot more you could do. So remember, this is essential for you to understand is because we have this form that has a data source that is the table of colors itself, right? So it's bound to that data source. We can modify things on the form without deleting it in the table unless we actually delete a record. So let's go back to this and I'll show you this. So another property of the form, again, let's make sure we're on the form. I click the dot. Right now we're on the format properties. If we go over to data, if you click this little tab over here, you'll notice this property called record source. And it says your table colors. So that means this table is bound to table colors. So what does that mean? That means if I'm looking at this form that shows colors and I select this record selector here, and I hit delete on my keyboard, it will delete it from the database, right? I'm going to hit no to undo that. It will delete that data from the database. However, if I'm looking at the form design and I decide, okay, I don't want them to see the ID field, and I delete the ID field, it does not delete the ID field from the table. You're just modifying what's in this form. Whereas when you're looking at it in form, like regular mode, right? Not design mode, where you're designing the look of the form, but in regular mode where you're interacting with the table. See, you'll notice my ID field is gone, but I didn't delete the ID field from the table. So here it is in the table. It's still there. I just don't show it on the form. Now, again though, since I am bound to data, if I decide to delete this, I can say yes or no. And remember, earlier episodes, I told you, you typically won't interface directly with tables. You'll do it through forms, and this is one way to do it. Is if you're looking at a form, let's say you're an admin of the database or whatnot, you're a super user, you can go into just look at your list of colors, and maybe we put some code behind it that makes sure, are you sure you want to delete that color? It could do some checks to tell you, oh, hey, there are 50 items using that color. Are you sure you want to delete it, kind of thing? We'll get to that in later episodes. But for now, just know this is how a form works, right? So I can delete the objects out of the form. I'm not deleting the table itself. While in design mode, I can do that. When I'm looking at the form and it's bound data, and I do this, right, I'm about to delete a record. Same thing if I start to edit something. If I say primer, I say gray primer, right? And I edit that. I have edited the data that is in the table. So if I open my actual table, now it's gray primer instead of primer, right? So this form is talking to, it's bound to that data. Now, let's look at some more properties while we're here. So first of all, let's make this colors kind of a little bit smaller, just the bounding box. And you'll note, again, I can go over here. There is no data property for label because a label does not hold data. It is just for display of text, maybe colors, right? So, but I can go back over to the format. I can change the caption from here or here. I can type here, right? So, and let's say I wanted to name this color list, right? I've now changed the caption of that label. And let's say I wanted to font underline yes. Again, you could also do this through the Format tab, but some things you can only do through properties. So remember earlier we had talked about, I'm going to add a divider line here. So this is just a simple line, and you'll see why in just a second. Now I've got a nice little divider line. Oh, and I don't like the borders around those boxes, so I can highlight both. Format, shape outline, transparent. There we have it. That way I want to get rid of that shape outline. Now, ooh, this looks a little cleaner now, right? Now, remember what I said before. If you're looking at it in form view and it's bound to data, if you modify this data, it's really modifying data. And look here, this is a blank row. So this means I can start adding colors as I see fit. So let's say we have a new color called lime green, and it costs 89 cents per ounce to paint that. There we have it. We've just added a new color to the database. And if I look at table colors, now we have a lime green in the database. Now, what if I want to display the data, but I do not want anyone to edit it? So I want to, let's say I want to initially display that data in a read-only mode, and then maybe later on we can edit it or enable some kind of edit function. Well, yes, we can initially lock down this form. I'll show you how to edit it later or change the mode later. It'll be through code. But for right now, yes, code. You'll learn code. No big deal. Right now, we're going to switch to design mode. And now there are some there's lots of options here. I'll let you guys explore, but I'm going to point out a couple over here in data. So we're looking at the data properties. They're kind of organized under the data field for this form. And you'll notice there are a few options. Allow additions, yes. Allow deletions, yes. Allow edits, yes. Let's swap all of those to no. You can double click to modify this, or you can just do the little drop down and switch it to no. But usually if it's only got two options, double clicking is much faster. So we've swapped those options to no. Now watch. Now you see that I don't have that blank line at the bottom of this form. This is in a read-only form. If I try to type something, nothing's happening. If I try to select this record and hit delete, nothing happens, right? I am in just a view-only mode at this moment. So I can kind of see the list of colors we have in our database, and that is about it. Now, sometimes you may want that. Other times you may want just full access. Eventually, you'll learn that through code, using code, we can determine how this form should open. Sometimes it should open depending on who the user is of the database in edit mode, and sometimes it should be read-only mode, right? So you have a lot of options. This is just introducing you to properties. We won't get into that until we get into code. So Going back to design mode, let's go ahead and make our footer kind of the same color as our header for completeness sake, right? So now our form is looking something like this. Now, you can also make this form a pop-up form. I probably wouldn't recommend it, but it does exist. So let's go over here to the other tab of the properties of the entire form. Again, we're on the entire form's properties. Pop-up, double click it, you'll make it yes. Now, if I go to the form, oh wow, that is horrible, right? Let's resize it here. There we go. Now it is a pop-up form versus kind of like an embedded form. I'm going to right-click it in my little objects list here to go to design. I'm going to take it off for now, but you can do that. Now, if you do pop-up and modal means you cannot get out of that form until it closes. So normally, so let's do this. Let's do, I'm going to go to the Format tab of this entire form, and I'm checking border style of thin. That means the border is not resizable, and that's horrible. Let's get out of here. Oh, I know why it's. Let's do this. One moment. Technical difficulties. Auto resize. Oh, it is on auto resize. Yeah, we'll figure it out later. All right, let's go back to border style of sizable. Okay, if this is a non-modal form, I can have this open and then start clicking around the database still, right? It doesn't lock me into this form. So this guy can be floating around, whatever. I can drag it to a second monitor if I want. If you make this form modal, so let's close table colors. Let's go to design view of the form, the entire form, other, pop-up yes, and modal yes. Now, here's how it works. So now, I'm going to resize this. And see, I can't click anywhere else. It's going to force me to do something and close this form. I have no idea why it's opening so small. That's weird. I was messing with it last night. So, okay. So let's get out of pop-up mode. So I'm going to go back in design. Pop-up, modal, no. And you can flip through at your leisure to kind of look at how these work. There are a lot of things you can deal with. You might want to always make a copy of your database file before you start messing with it in case you do something you can't recover from. But that is just a simple introduction to form properties. So we've made our table, we added a field to it, then we highlighted that table, we went to create, more forms, multiple items, and then we kind of customized it from there in design view. And again, oh, here's one thing I almost forgot. So let's say you want to add an item to this form that you just deleted, like the ID field. How do you do that? Too easy. Go over to form design, and instead of looking at your property sheet, there's this thing called add existing fields. If you click it, it's going to show you a list of items from the data source it is bound to. So since this form is bound to this table has 3 fields: ID, color name, cost per ounce. Those are the 3 it allows me to choose from. So I can just drag that over to items. Now, anytime you have a text box or almost anything, it's going to have this label that gets attached with it. Most of the time, well, a lot of time, I don't use it, right? So I just delete the label. And so now we can go back to move the ID back over here. Oops, sorry, I was just on the font size, and then make the font larger. And then now we're looking at the ID field again, right? That is uneditable in this database because that is an auto number. So now there may be times when you want to, now remember, you can start mixing and matching this stuff. So for instance, let's say I don't want the user to be able to delete a row or edit, but I want them to be able to add new colors. So how do I do that? Okay, cool. So remember what properties we had, right? Let's go to the main form. Again, right now we're in the field list. Go to property sheet. So I want them to allow additions, yes. Allow deletions, allow edits, no. So when I do that and I look at the form, now I've got that cool nifty green line, nifty new line. So let's go with fire orange, right? And that is a premium color. And so I was able to add that color, but if I go and try to edit something, nope, it's not letting me do it. If I try to delete something, no, not letting me do it, right? So you can mix and match those properties to make the form act exactly how you want it to act. And that is it for this episode. Thanks so much for joining me. If you find this channel useful, please like and subscribe. Click the bell for notifications. The next episode, the next one on our main quest list, rather, after this, after we look at these form properties, are database table relationships. And this is where things start to get really fun. So don't miss that episode. Again, this is the main quest line. If you're brand new, we're slowly building a database, whether you know it or not. So the next episode, I'll see you guys then. Thanks so much. Have a great day.